Do you hate change, especially unexpected or unwanted change? It can be uncomfortable at best and often terrifying at worst. Even good change, we all know, can be destabilizing because something familiar in our world ends and a new beginning is starting. A child may get married, we retire, we finish school, we sell a home, or launch into something new. So even good changes can carry grief and complicated inner shifts.
We talk about what happens to us emotionally when changes come and the science of attachment that informs the way we navigate these transitions. Most people don't struggle with change because they're weak. They struggle because change touches our experience of connection and attachment, our identity, the experience of grief, and our desire to control our environment. Today, in this podcast, we offer practical insights and ideas that we hope will leave you feeling more empowered and less anxious when change comes.
Do you sometimes feel lost in your relationships, your identity, or even your spirituality? Welcome to Gilmore Green, where healing and hope meet.
We are marriage and family therapists and relationship experts who care deeply about helping you grow, strengthen your relationships, and deepen your sense of meaning and spirituality.
We long to share from our clinical experience, years of training and solid research, including ideas about how to strengthen the things that matter the most to all of us in life.
We're so glad you're here. Our hope is to share simple, meaningful ideas that support you in your healing and in your growth. Welcome to Gilmore and Green, where healing and hope meet. Hi, I'm Dr. Debi Gilmore, a marriage and family therapist passionate about the relationships in our lives. Today, we're wondering if you are in the middle of a new transition, maybe anticipating a difficult change in life, or maybe even excited about new changes coming that will make life feel different.
My name is Sharilyn Green. I'm also a marriage and family therapist. And Debbie, I can't wait to talk about this subject today because change is something I want to be better at. I want to get more comfortable with the challenging in-between time of a transition I think that we're all familiar with. It's that gap between the old and the new that can often feel really scary, discombobulating, upsetting sometimes. But it's also where meaningful, deep reorganization in our lives can happen. The thing I think I'm the most excited about today, though, as we talk about this topic, is the attachment science that you and I love, and it will help explain why change and transitions often shake our very sense of safety, our belonging, our identity, again, our connections. It actually activates some of our deepest attachment needs. I'm excited, too, that we're going to talk about the science that will explain why safe connection within us, I love that, and with others helps move us through endings, uncertainty, and new beginnings with greater courage and compassion. So I'm really excited about this today.
Me too. The thing that we need to remember is life deals change all the time. There's changes in the nature of our existence. So what we want to do is understand change and the difference between change versus transitions. I almost like that word better. It might be helpful to distinguish the difference between change and transition because change is what happens around us. Things like selling our house, a child leaving for college, maybe a shift in our marriage or the end of a job or schooling. So these are examples of external changes in our world, but transitions, those are what happen inside of us when these external changes occur. They often require an internal reorganization, like, who am I now? What am I grieving? What am I being invited to release, let go of? What is trying to be born in me? And sometimes we cope with change by dragging an old identity into a new season, when new season actually requires a brand new identity or an identity reconstruction. So this is why both change and those inner transitions can feel so emotional. We're not only managing circumstances, we are becoming someone different or new.
Already, this is insightful to me as to why change can be so, painful and terrifying when you think about what's actually happening. It is a lot. So today, we really hope to offer insight and ideas that will help all of us move through transition and change with greater steadiness, connection, and meaning. Debbie, as you and I study transition models, they always point out that transitions begin with endings. I love that realization. But I also love that our attachment science deepens this by saying endings aren't merely logistical, they're bonds being reorganized. That aligns so much with our attachment understanding. We're actually reorganizing bonds, and that can be extensive and hard. And again, why change can be so painful.
And yes, it can also be sad because we're missing what was, and now we have to embrace something new. When we move or graduate from school, sell a home, lose a role, that's an important one, become an empty nester, retire, I like to say reinvent ourselves, or bury our parents. When we change careers or enter a new stage of life, we are grieving. We're grieving who we were, what we knew, where we belonged, who needed us. These are hard. What felt predictable that's now unpredictable, what we thought life would look like, almost as if we're grieving the loss of a dream, one that we had formed in our mind and it's going differently than we expected.
Yeah, they really are actually destabilizing because, again, they activate, like you talked about, Debbie, our very attachment systems, challenging our identity. And a lot of times these changes aren't chosen, they happen out of the blue. And that can be really hard because it interrupts familiar rhythms, roles, people, places, predictability. And so, of course, our nervous systems start to scan for certainty. It's wired to do that. And that happens in the uncertainty that we feel. I think some of the questions, if we slow down this place where change comes upon us, we are really fundamentally asking ourselves, am I safe in this new change? Am I doing this alone? Is there someone here for me? Who's here for me? Can I even handle what's coming next? And maybe one of the biggest questions, will this be a positive change? Will this be good for me? Or is this going to make life worse or more difficult? These are fundamental attachment questions that we have. Additionally, attachment science tells us that we're not designed as human beings to navigate these changes in isolation. You and I know, Debbie, that we best regulate through safe connection, both with others and within ourselves. And I think it's that idea that if we have a safe, secure connection with ourselves, that can be a very powerful state of being to draw on when we're navigating change, and something we're going to talk about a little bit more later.
Right. And, as you talk about those questions we should be asking ourselves, I think it might be helpful to think back on changes you have experienced before now and preparing for changes that will inevitably come later. And keep those questions in mind and keep the information that we're sharing with you today in mind so that you can prepare better. It doesn't mean it's going to remove all the discomfort, but you will be better prepared. It's important to remember that before change and transitions can feel positive, they feel threatening because our brain is trying to navigate all of the new unknowns. When life feels unknown, our attachment system naturally wonders if we're still going to be loved, needed, safe, seen, and connected in this new season of our life. But this may also explain why we feel more reactive, maybe even clingy or avoidant and controlling, sad or irritable during transition times. It's not usually bad behavior, but rather our attachment alarm system is signaling distress. It's normal. Some people pursue, they plan or try to fix and cling and demand reassurance or overfunction. We see all of these things happen in the midst of change and transitions. Some might even withdraw to cope or shut down and minimize or disappear. But most of us in general, we wonder, what will happen to us? Will I matter in this new season? Will I be left behind? Can I trust myself as I transition? Can I trust God that He will be there for me? Will I still be loved if my role changes? And maybe we could even say, will I be valued if my role changes?
Yeah, it's interesting because it can often expose our attachment styles and strategies and how we cope with uncertainty. So if we have an attachment anxious style, we might say to ourselves, wow, I need a lot of reassurance right now. I need to know we're okay. I need a plan. Don't leave me alone in this. That's a very common response when we have an anxious attachment style. If we have an avoidant attachment style, it may sound like, I'm fine, I don't need anyone, let me handle this by myself, don't pressure me. It starts to expose how we cope. For those of us with a secure attachment, this may sound like, this is hard, but I can feel it, I can talk about it, I can ask for help, and I can stay connected while I adapt. So when we're navigating change, it really is an opportunity. It gives us a chance to notice important things about ourselves and the ways that we cope. We can look more carefully at how we reach when we're in distress, what we do to protect when we're feeling threatened or uneasy, how we might or may not pull away, or how we protest. So it's an opportunity in these times to slow down and really learn some things about ourselves and the ways that we cope.
I want to point out you brought out some attachment styles, and we might see those tendencies within us. We're not suggesting that you're crazy. It's actually just the way that we cope with distress. And of course, if it goes to an extreme, that is dysfunctional. But if you feel anxious or if you feel avoidant, if you feel secure, that's great. Lucky you. But most of us will experience some of those, a little bit of anxiety with it or a little desire to pull away. That's not crazy. That's normal for you. So give yourself permission. Instead of fighting against it, give yourself permission to feel the way you do and let that be okay for a minute. Just if you do that alone, that will ease the stress that you're feeling. So we want to now shift gears and talk about how to better navigate change and transitions. We talk about a secure base. That's kind of a scientific word, but one of the most powerful attachment concepts is this secure base. When we feel emotionally safe, we are much better equipped to explore, risk, grow, and face the uncertainty change brings when we have that secure base. In transitions, people need anchors. So, what is a secure base? It's a person who sees them. You just feel like they get you, they see you, they understand you. That's a secure feeling. Or a rhythm that steadies us when we go through distress. A faith practice or grounding ritual that can also be considered a secure base or foundation from which to launch. A home base, the nest where you live, where you belong. A therapist or a friend, a spouse, a family member, and community. You hear people say, they're just my person. That's my person that I just know I can rely on. That's a secure base. Maybe a secure base would even be an inner voice that says, I can do hard things and I don't have to do them alone. I know that I can navigate this, even though it will be hard. Without that secure base, whatever yours might be, change can feel like failing and falling. With that secure base, change can feel like a simple crossing of a bridge to something new.
I love this idea of anchors. I'm thinking about it in my own life. I love the idea of just slowing down in a change and considering what are my anchors, whether it's that voice within that we can rely on, that I can do hard things and I don't have to do them alone, or whatever it is. Sometimes maybe we miss the opportunity to identify those and change them. They really do make such a difference. Debbie, as you were talking about these anchors, I was also thinking about a concept to view change as opportunities for growth rather than the threat that they can feel like to our attachment system. Change can be a threat, or it can be viewed as formative growth, inviting us to consider who we might be becoming through these changes. Asking questions of ourselves, what can I learn from these changes? I'm wondering what new experiences I'm going to have in this change. Or how can I use what may be uncomfortable to help me get stronger in an area that I may be weak? I really like this mindset of looking at change as a growth zone. It can feel like a threat and terrifying if we're not careful.
Let me add something in there. This is a sign of courage, though, because it doesn't matter if you embrace it and you look at it as an opportunity for growth. It doesn't mean that it's going to be comfortable, but we're just saying, okay, fasten my seatbelt. Here we go.
So glad you said that. Yes. So maybe some questions or things to think about is, a marriage transition, which can be hard, may invite more differentiation. A career transition may invite, like you said, more courage. It does take courage to even do this. A parenting transition might invite being able to let go better in life. A faith transition might invite deeper trust. An aging transition might invite more humility and wisdom in our lives, or a grief transition can invite greater tenderness and compassion for others. So, yeah, this isn't easy to do. You're right. It's hard and difficult, but helpful sometimes to consider how is this going to help me grow in positive ways.
And another thing that we can do is to look at it as, yes, this will be uncomfortable, but it's just like when I exercise and it hurts my muscles, I know that my muscles are improving, I'm getting stronger, and I will emerge better. So all of these things that we're talking about doesn't mean it's easy, but there is a great benefit to these transitions that we might be making. There has to be some inner work in the uncomfortable middle. There has to be there's no comfort in the growth zone, is the way I like to say it. And there's no comfort in the growth zone. So the messy middle of transition can feel the most uncomfortable because the old identity is now gone, but the new one has not yet formed. So we're in this kind of nebulous place of, wait, where do I land? I don't even know yet, but I think I have a target and I'm hoping that I can get there. I just know it might hurt a little. So again, attachment questions rise up here. Where do I belong now? Who am I if I'm not that anymore? Will my important relationships survive this change? That one right there might be the most disconcerting. If I change, and that's true, when we grow, those around us may even protest when they witness that we're growing and we're changing. And now that's disconcerting for them and it forces them into a transition. Can I trust what's coming to me and to those around me? Here's one, that I really think we need to focus on too. Will I be happy in this new place or state of being? This is where we often need the most compassion, self-compassion, and hopefully compassion from our secure base or our person, not pressure to hurry up and adjust.
Yeah, this uncomfortable middle, I like to call it almost a wilderness period or experience because things can often feel unclear, cloudy, again, unstable. It might even be hard to find motivation because, again, the old structures may be gone and new ones haven't formed yet, Debbie, like you've talked about. So this place really can feel disorientating, inefficient, or sometimes even depressing. We do want to offer so much compassion to ourselves and each other when we're in this kind of messy middle. But we also want to suggest and remind us that it's in this very place where deep inner reorganization often happens. It's a process that shouldn't be rushed because the very discomfort of this reorganization period can often produce powerful wisdom, creativity, and renewal in ways that just haven't happened before. So if we can trust the discomfort, it often becomes a creative and even a sacred place where imagination and healing and new directions can begin. Sometimes it's hard to see that in the beginning, especially of this messy middle, as we're saying goodbye to old things that leave us feeling unfamiliar and maybe scared.
The other thing I just thought about is sometimes we dig our heels in and we don't want change. We might see that there is a benefit, but we want to dig in our heels and hold on to what is. And all the things that you've been listing here, Sherilyn, are indicators of that benefit that we will get if we are willing to be vulnerable, risk, and jump into the change. Well, let's just say walk into the change. Because it's tempting to want to jump straight from an ending to a new beginning because our brain loves answers and certainty, but skipping grief and uncertainty of change and transition can make the new beginning shallow or even unstable, creating an unstable foundation. It is our experience that the inner work we do matters as much as the outer decision. So it might be helpful to watch for early signs of new growth and celebrate the process in little increments as you quietly notice small signs of new energy, curiosity, commitment, and renewed identity. It often starts slowly. In fact, it should, and typically takes root internally within before it's fully visible externally. I think about a neighbor I just visited. I had no idea that she had fruit trees in her backyard. And it was so fun to walk around and just see the different ones. Each one was a different variety. But they were about 3 years old and finally were about to bear fruit. And it was so exciting. She showed me some of the buds that are on some of the limbs and how she had waited for those 3, 4 years for them to finally produce. So it does take time to notice the fully visible things that will happen. We need to be patient in the process.
I love that visual. It reminds me, I think, of visuals we've seen too of a root system underground, growing and expanding with nothing to show yet above, and same concept. And I love that visual as we do this because it does take time. We moved 26 times with our 6 kids, and every time we move, everyone was struggling with the move. And I would always say, we're going to give it a year. And if everybody's still miserable in a year, then we'll do something. And without fail, by the end of the year, we'd all adjusted. But it is painful, that transition time that you're talking about, but so much is happening and growing underneath, like you said. We, as marriage and family therapists, we also know and understand that when change comes and transitions come, it doesn't just affect usually just us, right? It usually involves maybe our spouse, our partners, our children, our family. And so it's important to remember that transitions can often destabilize relationships because people may need different things at the same time or in different ways. So it's helpful to be aware of that so we can be supportive of each other in vulnerable transition times. One person may need closeness right now, another may need space. One needs and wants to talk about what's happening, where another may want to problem solve or not talk at all. They just need to be quiet and withdrawn in themselves. One may be grieving the changes while another may feel relieved. Some of us want reassurance while others feel criticized or inadequate through some of this. So, from our attachment science, instead of maybe asking questions of who's handling this wrong or what are we all doing wrong as we go through this as a couple or a family, a better question to ask ourselves with deep sensitivity to those around us: what is this transition or this change stirring up inside each of us? And how can we become safer for each other while we move through this? It's again back to this secure base that we can be for each other, especially in our most intimate relationships when we're navigating distressing or destabilizing change. So we just wanted to mention that too.
I was thinking about what you said about your family. You moved 26 times, and that is disconcerting for anybody to have that many changes. Some people love change, but what you did for your family was you said, it's okay. Let's prepare. It's going to be hard. And let's give each other wiggle room to decide, is this working? But you gave them a long period of time. I'm guessing by the end of that year, they were like, no, we're not leaving. We love it here. But what we're suggesting, or what you were talking about just now, is it's helpful for everyone to prepare for what's coming ahead. And if you anticipate change, to have that conversation with those that are closest to you to say, I recognize, we recognize hard times are going to come. This will be uncomfortable, but this is a good thing. So let's do this together and anticipate, the self-compassion and the offering of compassion to others that is required. So transitions are opportunities to invite earned security. Let's talk about that. This is the hopeful part of this whole process. Every transition can become a place where we practice a more secure way of being. So instead of controlling, we can ask for reassurance. And that's what I was just talking about a minute ago, where you prepare for what's coming ahead. Instead of withdrawing, we can say, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Instead of blaming, we can name our fear. You know what? I sound a little irritated, but I'm just plain afraid. And so I'm not my best self right now. Or instead of rescuing, we can stay present with boundaries. Instead of collapsing, we can reach for support. As we think about transitions, I'm thinking about my friends who are now entering empty nester stage, where they still want to parent their children. And the change is so painful, and you want to stay connected. But staying connected will look different with those new boundaries. Instead of collapsing and giving up, we can say, let's see if we can identify what are the new boundaries that we need to have in place so that we can still have connection, but it'll look different. Instead of rushing past grief, honor what mattered. Have that place inside of your heart that says, yes, I'm sad because I loved what I had so deeply. Transitions become not just something to survive, but places where attachment patterns can heal and strengthen in each other.
I hope we've tried to point out, this isn't easy for anyone. It's completely normal to feel like things are falling apart. We want to stress that even with secure attachment, that's not the absence of fear in this. It's still a place where you will feel fear and grief, loneliness, uncertainty, and overwhelmed. The difference may be when we handle it in secure ways that we can do things like name what's happening inside. We can talk about it and say, like you said, I'm afraid, this is scary, I'm worried about what this new change will bring. Instead of withdrawing and isolating, we can reach for support, like we've talked about, to our secure bases. We can receive comfort. Sometimes that's hard. I love a phrase from the Old Testament, actually, that talks about, I think, Job and his friends, where he says they refuse to be comforted. We can be like that in life. We can refuse to be comforted. And so to gain the skill of receiving comfort through a really raw, painful change in our lives is healthy. We can stay emotionally engaged. We can use these times to repair disconnection, and we can develop the skill of holding both grief and hope. This isn't easy to do. So we want to stress that this security that we're all looking for and hoping for doesn't mean that this isn't shaking me, or this isn't hard, or this isn't scary. It means I can still be afraid and shaken and still find my way back to connection and stability through some of this. So I hope that you feel our compassion and the normalcy of how difficult changes and transitions are.
Yeah, this list of suggestions that you just made, Sherilyn, if we don't talk about our discomfort, we're actually setting up our people to fail for us. If we say, I need help or I'm feeling overwhelmed, there's nothing like being able to hear, I'm here for you, and to be able to communicate that I'm shaken. This is hard. I'm grieving. I do have hope, but please help me. Those kinds of things set up our people to be there for us in a better way. But here's another thing I love. I am a huge advocate of rituals because they stabilize our world around us. They help our nervous system, our brain, to tolerate change. We actually need, and we'll call these anchors, but rituals are more things like the things that we do every day. Traditions are holidays or intervals during the year, but rituals are daily, regular things that we can look forward to. And when they happen, they ground us. So it's tangible ways that mark endings and beginnings. Here's an example: a goodbye dinner before moving. We all do that. Isn't it wonderful when neighbors say, let's get together, celebrate this thing that's happening. We're also going to acknowledge that we're grieving, or a blessing or prayer over a new season. Now, I remember in our children's lives, their daddy always gave them what we call a father's blessing before they entered the new school year. And I remember when I went back to college, and my husband offered that to me, and I was like, oh, yes, I'm a student too. And every year when that new year would launch, to receive that was a ritual of comfort, or a final walk through a home, or a letter to the version of yourself you're leaving behind. That one's so creative and so helpful. The conversation with self, a weekly check-in during a major family change. How are we doing this week? What have we accomplished? What do we need to face, and how do we prepare? and maybe a what we're carrying forward conversation. Yes, we're leaving things behind, but what are we holding on to? Maybe even a symbolic object, a photo or phrase that anchors continuity. Rituals tell our nervous system that something is changing, yes, but not everything is lost.
Yeah, and as you're talking this secure transition that we're looking at, you have to hold two things at once. It requires holding on, but also letting go, and that can be complicated. So in our attachment science, it doesn't just say just detach, just let go, right? It says healthy development happens when we can stay connected while also growing. So we develop the skill of holding two things at once. The goal of transition isn't to cut off from the past. It's actually, like you said, to carry things forward, the things that are good, then at the same time releasing what no longer fits. That's complicated in our brains and in our nervous systems, but a beautiful way to do this. The secure change allows us to honor what has held us while making room for what is calling us. I love that. And so in every transition, we might ask ourselves, what am I carrying forward? What kind of values, what kind of wisdom, what kind of experiences that I've had, relationships, lesson, courage, as you've talked about, Debbie. In this transition time or change, what are the things that I'm carrying forward with me? At the same time, asking now, what am I releasing? It might be old roles, over responsibility for something that's now outgrown, us in our life. We hopefully can release some of the fear or the resentment or the urgency that may have been part of the old world as we're changing. And then I love this. What do I bless as I leave things behind? Seasons that have mattered, even if they're over. We're in the process of selling a home that we've been in for 29 years. So much life has been lived there. We raised, our children and, a great deal in this home with a wonderful neighborhood. Our son-in-law with ALS lived with us and passed away in this home. And so it is a painful change in process, but sorry, I'm getting emotional, trying to cherish the memories and the good things that have happened there for 29 years and to carry that forward now into a new place. And so change is hard. It's personal for all of us. And so I love these ideas of being able to hold both grief, but also the letting go and moving forward. Sorry, didn't mean to get so emotional, Debbie.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I love hearing you talk about your son and the grief and the love combined that you have for him to this day. The significance of being able to nurture him in this home where you are now, to let go of that home, but you bring with you those rich memories. And there is a difference between being able to just let go and walk away from stuff.
Mhm.
Like when I donate something to, those who need, I just take that bag of clothes and say, here you go. I can turn around and walk away and let it go because it's stuff. But relationships, memories, things that do matter. Your home matters, but what you bring with it is the memorial and the wonderful way that you grew through the loss of your son's physical presence with you. I hope you won't ever apologize for expressing that emotion. But I just think it's important that we look at the difference between being able to cut off and walk away from stuff versus those things that have enriched our lives, made us better. So here's a closing thought. We are not meant to become secure by avoiding change or transitions. We become more secure as we learn to move through change with connection, just as we talked about this situation with your son, Sherilyn. Change with connection and with honesty, with grief, with courage, and with new hope. Releasing what no longer serves us, stuff, and stepping into the next season with more self trust, self compassion, and that courage that will carry us forward. So here's our moment. I love this when we can say, therefore, what? For me, as I think about it, Sherilyn, and then I do want you to share yours, but as I've listened to you talk about, what we can ask ourselves, how we can prepare, The thing that stands out the most to me is when you were talking about asking people for help, allowing those others to comfort us, to be open, even as an introvert or someone who withdraws usually to cope with distress, to be able to identify that person to say, hey, I'm going through a hard change. Can you help me? I need connection. Can you walk with me in this? That's something that I need to do more of. And I want to encourage those that I love to know the door is wide open. If they are going to go through change, please let me know. I want to be there for you.
Yeah, I love that, Debbie. And you actually do that. As we were talking about this, I've thought about the times you've said to me, this is a hard change, and you've allowed me to sit with you, my heart to be next to yours. And we do need to do that more, myself included. Sometimes we are afraid to be vulnerable about the painful changes that are happening in our lives. And we rob ourselves and we rob others of beautiful times where we can connect and support each other through change. I think my therefore what is to have more self trust and more trust in the process of life. I think one thing I believe in deeply is that in all of us, there is a divine orchestration happening in our lives by a higher power, by the God we may all believe in. I do believe that it's important to trust that when change comes, there is a divine orchestration happening, that we can deeply trust Him. And that's not easy to do. It feels like falling off a cliff so many times, but I've lived long enough to know that if I'll trust through that scary process, usually on the other side, I can clearly see that my life is being guided in ways that I couldn't begin to see on my own. So I think that's my therefore what is to strengthen that trust in the divine orchestration that I've experienced in life and trust in myself that I can do hard things when change comes, because it is scary and frightening. I'm so glad we've been able to talk about this today. It's something we all deal with, and it's hard to change. These transitions are hard. So that's my therefore what.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Sherilyn. Thank you to all you who follow us and listen to these podcasts. We particularly appreciate the topics that you have sent to us wanting us to cover, because those tend to be the most popular podcast episodes. So thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.